Hi, I'm Rory Greeno of XR Today, and this is the December 2024 edition of the Big XR News Show. It's going to be a nice little roundup of past events in the past year. It's been a very busy year. I'm sure my regular panelists will agree with me. Laticia, Kevin, thank you so much for joining. It'd be really interesting to go through some of your highlights and perhaps some understated moments over the past year. Obviously, compared to years previously with the metaverse boom, etc., the hype wave of XR has perhaps been reserved to experts, niches, and the odd news flare here and there. But it doesn't mean nothing was happening. There was a lot happening in 2024. It was incredibly busy. So just to kick us off, Laticia, why don't you give us your top moment in the XR industry over the past year? Perhaps what stood out to you most? And then Kevin, it'd be great to get your perspective there as well.
For me, thank you, Rory, for having me again. For me, it was really the first content, the real artistic or, the contents that I've seen in mixed reality that came about and that were super interesting. For instance, with the Apple Vision Pro, the AVP, some of the works developed on that system, on that software and hardware, I thought that was quite interesting to also have a new perspective for where audiovisual works and the field in general is leading towards. That was, I think, because we finally got the first wave of really good content coming out of the studios. So that was my I don't know, Kevin, what did you have any AVP breakthroughs this year?
Well, I suppose in the world I live in kind of, what's the art of the possible with technology? You have to hand it to the kind of the Vision Pro. It kind of sucked the air out of the room for the first half of the year. So Apple get credit for, I suppose, showing what you can build in terms of a standalone device with a spatial computing, as they would call it, view of the world. Now, obviously, history will put it down to be a commercial success or a failure. They've stopped production. They only sold 500,000 units. But I think it kind of gave people the art, or again, made them aware of, look at the kind of things you could do. Now, granted, the form factor is not perfect, and we need more app support, and. But there's a lot of other things, smaller things that I'll comment on later. But I suppose just purely as kind of the mainstream press item of the year for this industry was the Vision Pro. I suppose the flip side is that you didn't see all the thing. Oh, it was a failure.
As usual.
I'd like to define how they define failure. As I say, they only sold 500,000 units at $3-4 grand a pop. There's a lot of companies out there that would see that as pretty successful. And granted, I know Apple is different and. But that was probably the standout moment for all sorts of reasons, just purely in terms of what the general public see of XR.
Yeah, fantastic. And going from the Apple Vision Pro, which, as you say, kind of sucked the air out the headlines a little bit and took that first place, at least in terms of mainstream interest, there was lots of other product announcements and launches. So whether that be from firms like Pimax or Vuzix bringing stuff into the workplace and consumer space, you had Apple Vision Pro, you had a new update of the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, and then you also had firms enter or announce their entry into the space. Samsung, Sony, or at least Sony with a new XR device at least. A lot of product announcements are going on. Obviously, Apple Vision Pro was a big one, but perhaps Kevin and then Laticia would be great to have your follow-up. Are there any other product announcements that you've seen, or any companies entering the space? Doesn't have to even be a headset, could be a service, could be a software, etc., that really stood out to you and perhaps could be that pinnacle changing point to XR entering the workplace a little bit more broadly for exposure, etc. So, Kevin, what was your other standout product?
I suppose I'd have three angles to that, if I may. One would be, and it's kind of back to Leticia's point, there was an explosion of content on the Meta Quest store this year in terms of VR games. Now, if you're into VR games and you're in that world, this is like, oh God, look at all this stuff. This is really cool. If you're not in there, you don't see it. But that shows that let's say the base ecosystem in terms of software and experiences and whatever is continuing, right, and expanding. So that was one angle. The second angle would be, as you said, that there was like every company I know had a product announcement this year, and if you were using Varo in defense or aerospace, or if you were using RealWare as out in the field, or you were, pick a product, right? Everybody had an announcement, and everybody had a better this or a better that or better graphics or more compute power and. But one thing I was skeptical of what came out at the start of the year, but it changed my mind over the course of the year. More and more people that I know that are not into XR or whatever got a pair of the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, and they were like, "This is great." Now, it's got nothing to do with what you see in terms of like a heads-up display or whatever. It's just purely you look at something, take a picture. Hey, what am I looking at? And it uses AI and whatever, and that kind of again made people aware of the art of the possible. So that was a standout product. And I suppose the other thing, again, in my world, and that would be in the industry, was, forget about Gen AI for a while, right? That kind of sucked the air out of everything else for the rest of the year. But everybody started talking about digital twins. And I know digital twins mean so many things to so many people. But now people started looking at it going, well, okay, there's all different types. We have different types. We need to visualize things, how we train people. Because again, in industry, one of the biggest challenges right now is how do we train the people? Where do we get the skilled workers? How do we upskill? How do we keep the workers we have? And. So a lot more focus on let's create a living digital twin, not just a once-off siloed app. Let's create it so we can share data amongst the silos in the company. So we start talking about platforms. Now, that's a long-term play, but without that, I think we still remain niche. So I think that's building. So to me, it was just the amount of VR gaming content is growing. The Ray-Bans that got people, again, going, I've never tried this is cool. And then the whole digital twin and platforms in industry. Because once you get that plumbing layer established over the next 12, 18 months, it's much easier to deploy any kind of XR. Plus you had Niantic with Scaniverse, whatever, 4.0, you had the ability to reality capture, like each part of the food chain just became easier, less friction. I think that'll all add to us over in 2025, makes life easier for everybody.
Yeah, I have the impression that the research and development aspects suddenly came into, they geared up and we see the difference. Also, in the application, the use cases, I've seen really a surge of health-related software developments. Really, in this field, there are so many new endeavors and startup spin-offs coming into the game because it's working, people are embracing it, and I would say the threshold is not that difficult to pass. So it's become something of a new coming technology that is not emerging anymore, and that hospitals here and in Europe are embracing more and more. And so it makes for newer and upgraded developments. So I'm really psyched about that part of things. And also in the educational field, obviously, it's always growing. But what I've seen mostly is museums, scenography, culture, heritage also had a big leap forward this year. The most impressive thing that I've seen was the reproduction, the digital twin, if you want, but of a very big painting, one of those panoramas, back in the days. That's the actual, that's the cradle of immersion, those panoramas, where people would go. It was really 360 painted linen canvas, and you would look at it and they would even put some sort of real haptics in there, like a hand sticking out of the canvas, or like eyes suddenly looking at you or something like that. So it could be spooky, but they made a digital twin of one of the oldest ones, in Switzerland, and this is the laboratory for experimental museology that did this with Sarah Candidine. Sarah Candidine is actually world famous. She works a lot with Hong Kong and in the East as well. And this is the biggest data set for culture and heritage ever. So I thought that was pretty amazing. And they even developed a new tool for the photogrammetry of this very old and sensitive canvas painting that is like, I think, 150 meters long or something, you know? And then they reenacted it where you can dive into it and you can wear a little necklace that gives sense at certain moments of the that panorama is about a battle. So you have horse shit, sweat, like you have it all. It's not always very yummy, but it's interesting where it's leading us.
Fantastic. And to continue that point, Laticia, is the use of AI in some of these emerging cases that we're talking about, whether it be headsets or some of the other examples you both gave. It'd be great to get your insight into how AI affected XR in 2024. That was another key talking point. Laticia, it'd be great to kick it off, and then Kevin, follow up.
Yes, I've seen it used for the narrative part. I will go more into that, the storytelling side of things, because people have started really playing with it, even developing entire narratives or new types of storytelling, and that has been a big, yes, I would say a big trend, at least in the content creation side. There has been a development called Casper AI that is really good, and others where suddenly you don't need to put together all the pieces, but they can become something of their own, like, So Kevin, I guess that you have more of an industrial take on this.
Yeah, more than likely. I was at an event at the start of the week with industry folks, whatever, and what I said there, and I'll say here as well, is that actually AI and generative AI, it's actually affecting almost everything.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, and granted, AI means all things to all people. And at Web Summit a couple of months back now, every company was AI. And of course, then the question was, well, what kind of AI? Is that machine learning? Is it neural networks? Is it the latest and greatest transformer? Whatever, right? So everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. But if you look at everything we do, and whether it's using your mobile phone, Apple, Google, whatever, Android, whatever, whether you're on a laptop, MacBook, whether you're doing stuff in the cloud, whether you're developing software, whether you're just answering emails, whether you're looking for information, we're starting to use AI kind of just whether we like it or not, the AI tools. And if you look at some of the developments that are happening, especially with things around voice control and using an AI, a chat prompt instead of, I speak to it instead of typing it in. And you'd say, well, that's not really anything to do with XR. And I would go, well, actually, the whole XR experience is about augmented reality, virtual reality, whatever, something reality. So instead of sitting down and typing something into a screen, if I can just, with my Ray-Bans, go, hey, what am I looking at? And it gives me an answer. Now, that's AI. Without AI, that wouldn't happen. So I think where we're starting to see a pervasiveness of AI is just coming into everything. In the industry space, obviously, Laticia, to your point, a lot of it is around, writing the stories and whatever. So the big large language models from all of the usual players, OpenAI, Google, Meta, yada, yada. But we're seeing more and more big companies, the Siemens, the ABBs, the you name it, of the industrial world, coming up with their own foundational models, their own language models, IBM doing the same. But you also have things like Hugging Face, where people are putting up their own data models, their own transformer models, their own LLMs, open source, and You can go up and look for any industry, pull down something that you might be able to use, and away you go. And then with the advent of, especially in the industrial space, the what we'll see with AI hardware coming to the edge, and whether that's in the device you're wearing or the phone or the industrial PC or the controller. And what I mean by that is people are putting NVIDIA chips into industrial PCs. The new Qualcomm chips have tensor cores, for want of a better word, for running AI algorithms in the device. The kind of stuff we were thinking, you can do that, only do that in the big cloud with NVIDIA, right? That's coming to the edge. And there's more, all sorts of chips coming up with people allowing you to be able to run AI at the edge. And I think it'll just AI will impact everything we're doing. Good, bad, there'll be some probably great success stories and some horrendous, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. But I think that's the biggest change coming next year. And that will accelerate because it reduces a lot of the barriers. One of the great ones I see is people saying, well, to have my digital twin or to have my language model, I need good data. How do I know my data is good? You can use AI now to start cleaning your data. So again, AI is kind of pervasive across whatever problem we used to have. I think you have to rethink that. Can AI help me fix that traditional hurdle we always had? I think that's the biggest change that's coming.
To your point, I think that I'm always assessing the AI inputs that I'm giving in different languages, and the outputs are not the same, whether it's in French, German, or English. And that's interesting to know as well, that we're not there at the same pace with each language. Also, there is something that I really look forward to are these AI virtual avatars, the virtual humans, if you want, that are now AI driven, that can populate worlds and that can be social and active in these worlds. So this will make, to go back to the big M word, metaverse, that could also enhance the experience and perhaps bring people back to those spatial worlds and adventures.
Laticia, to your point, look at all the stuff we're seeing recently with you can upload your voice and your the avatar can speak in your voice. Now that can be good or bad depending on who's doing it, right? And create all sorts of fun and games for people.
You mean? Yeah.
You know what I mean, right? How do you know it's Kevin said that? And is that Kevin off in VR chat having a chat, or is it somebody else? So and again, human nature hasn't changed. Good guys will do good things, bad guys will do bad things. That's just going to happen. But again, the ability to be able to do that, or have someone's voice read the answers to you from ChatGPT. But then you start going, how can we use this in? How do we, for home care or something? How do we make this thing more acceptable to people and they like it and whatever? So I think this is where, as I say, the advancements in AI in the past 18, 20 months are kind of going to fundamentally come up with all sorts of new things right across the board, not just in one particular industry or one particular sector. And it's not all large language models. There's small language models, time series. There's all sorts of stuff going on.
Fantastic. And Kevin, to stay with you, and we'll move on to Leticia's thoughts on this next point as well, is events. Throughout the year, we got so many events going on, whether that be general consumer, business, or industry specific. And a lot of announcements, so much big news comes out of those spaces. Kevin, it'd be great to get your perspective on your top events in 2024 and why. And Laticia, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that too.
My top events, obviously, like last year, the general purpose events, for want of a better word, that I would say I'd go to would be CES and Web Summit, because you just get to see what the latest and greatest is from all different industries and see what people are playing with. Now, granted, what's at CES, what's at Web Summit, half of it at least is an idea or a minimum viable product, maybe. And you never hear of them again. But it's just to see what's going on in terms of every industry, and you just walk around going, God, I never didn't even know that existed or that was a thing. So that's that they're just for innovation, they're pretty good. Obviously, in my world, a couple of the big oil and gas events, Gas Tech, Adipec, you have Distributech, you have Inlet Europe, again, in the energy world, Hannover Messe for all things industrial. Obviously, again, AI sucked the air out of most things. But what I found interesting was that if you're walking around the show floors this year, you weren't going to see spatial computing or XR on the back wall of anything. You're going to see employee training or attracting talent or increasing productivity, whatever, the buzzwords that work in that industry. But what they were showing you was they had HTC or a Varo or a Quest or a Apple Vision. They had something, or an X-Real glasses. They had some XR technology that they weren't. That's not what they were selling per se, but the technology that was enabling the business problem they had was XR. And there was more of that, as opposed to just eye candy to get people onto the booth. So no, it wasn't that everybody had like 10 of these things, but I just saw more of them. I thought that was interesting. That just means that it's finding business use cases, and that's what people are selling, not the technology.
Fantastic. Laticia, some of your thoughts over the top events over the past year?
Yes, for me it's smaller. I don't go to, rarely go to those very big trade shows, because I get lost in there and I find you don't have the opportunity to really grasp and engage with the people and try out everything you'd like to. So I focus on immersive and spatial technologies related events. The latest I was at Immersive Tech Week in Rotterdam was really good. It's well curated. It's small. Everybody can speak to each other. You get a chance to really deep dive. Plus, you have this marketplace for matchmaking, and I even met people for the first time from Bangladesh, seeking business. And also, what I must say, here in Europe, we have put together, there is an initiative to have something in Africa, with sub-Saharan Africa, which is not Europe goes to Africa. It's we try to mingle and find ways to work together, because apparently there is a striving scene in Africa, and Roger Tang, the initiator of this new event called IMFest, did his first edition last September in Accra in Ghana, and we'll try to really put that back on track for the second edition this year. And also, I've really enjoyed CanXR, like Can altogether. The Can Next was really fantastic, because you have all these technologies, AI, all the soft being explained for its implementation in the audiovisual field. So it was really very interesting. Plus this big trend of immersive exhibitions, immersive and spatial experiences, these location-based experiences, that is really taking off now. We thought it wasn't possible a few years ago, and now it's really growing. Like Excurio, this French company, they're having a massive success in China with their destination experiences. So it's really interesting, because there is something happening here with that spatial format, really mapping, and rather than being enclosed. Also, there is one thing that I'm still fighting, is that strong belief in non-XR users that it is a solitary thing to do. And it is so far from the truth, because in which museum do you go and you have somebody tapping on your shoulder, putting explaining the experience, starting the experience, speaking to you after the experience? You only have that with XR. And people still stigmatize it as being a very secluded, closed in experience, which is so far from the truth. So,
Yeah, very well said. There's a lot of truth to that, especially considering how much multi-user modalities put into a lot of XR experiences for consumer or enterprise. But it'd be great to learn a little bit more following that about overshadowed or perhaps understated companies, hardware vendors, software, a solution, maybe even an event. Laticia, I know you work with a lot of startups, a lot of innovators. Maybe there's some light there that you could shed on some understated companies and some understated prospects in the XR space. And Kevin, it'd be great to learn a little bit more about perhaps understated projects that those not in the industrial sector may not even pick up on. So Laticia, please kick off and give us your understated company.
there is this company. Actually, it's German speaking Swiss company, but it's really going global, and it's made a big impact in China. And it has come up with this with a spatial tag for immersive technologies. The company is called Sensorix. You've probably heard of it. They started with gloves, and then they went on to have this spatial pen that is really super accurate and that you can also use for all kinds of assets in games or immersive experiences. And now they've just launched this spatial tag that is really 6DoF and tiny, precise, robust. And I'm really looking forward to what we can do with that tiny, tiny drop. It's really like that. It's a tiny drop.
Fantastic. Kevin, what about some overstated stuff from your perspective?
What I always find fascinating, you know, I always say I don't know what I don't know, right? And to Leticia's point, when you kind of wander around at a big events, and granted you can get lost in them very quickly, and there's so many and whatever, but I kind of wander around and I find companies that I might never have heard of. And I came across one at a Segre, kind of a transmission and distribution, primarily transmission, fairly geeky now if you're into thing. It was a company, they're called Prime Tech. And they had digital twins of substations, big transmission substations. And I was like, okay, never heard of you. What are you up to? And they explained what they were doing and what they were doing. And I was like, I was like, God, that's bleeding edge. And they had loads of customers. So this was a very successful company, small but successful, creating digital twins, training, real time. You know, it ticking a lot of the boxes in terms of it just wasn't a siloed app. It was pulling in data in real time, blah, 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 blah. And for training and arc flash and all this kind of stuff. So that's an example. I probably find another 10 or 15 companies that are going, well, we'll create a digital twin. We just need your CAD models, or we need a 3D point cloud, or you can now something like, what do you call it? Your phone. You don't even need a LiDAR camera anymore in your iPad or whatever. And we'll create it ain't going to be photorealistic, but we'll create a decent digital twin that you can use for training so people can orientate themselves that when you go on site, this is what it'll look like. And it's quick and it's fast and whatever. And if you know, one of the, let's say, geek technologies under the covers, this whole Gaussian splatting and the ability that can do to create kind of much better graphics qualities. Granted, it ain't cinema quality or photorealistic, but the way and the amount of companies are starting to use that, built on top of Unreal or Unity or whatever Niantic are doing, you know, whatever, yada yada yada. Again, that's where kind of the understated is, and it's not that this company is going to take over the world. And I think sometimes we expect that, oh well, whoever's going to win the XR world will have one device and everybody on the planet will use it because we all use smartphones. We all use smartphones, but smartphone's a category. It's not a individual device because you can distinguish them down. So I think there's lots of companies out there. Laticia, you mentioned in the healthcare space, the amount of them that are very successful doing all sorts of stuff. And hopefully what I think we'll see in 2025 is people from different industries understanding what people are using a technology for in their industry. because that's where you get that self-pollination. Even within one industry today, it's hard for people to figure out what's going on in their industry, not to mind other industries. But I think we'll see a bit more of that, because people will go, hang on a second, if you can do that in medical and that works, like, God, why can't we use that in the factory floor? You know, how we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Retail, the AR experiences on your phone, mixed reality, whatever you want to call it, in terms of what'll that handbag look like on the table, or the furniture from IKEA. You know, people are kind of becoming that's kind of common now. And you say, well, that's XR. That's just an app from IKEA. And you're like, yeah, okay, I understand, but that functionality, that's what you're talking about, you know. So but there's a lot of companies out there that probably don't get the credit. It's just that it's impossible to try and find them all and give them all a shout out at the same time. But there's a lot of people making good stuff, and I think that's just going to accelerate.
And I've seen also a few developments that were similar, but it's like quick volumetric capture or quick motion capture, you know, so that you can recreate the asset very quickly, integrate it in a scene. Doesn't need to be, as you were saying, you know, super duper quality and HD, but for web XR, it works, you know, that type of things. Because we have two types of quality here. The web-based and device-based somehow, right? And then another development that I'm very keen on following is Uro Cantori. I don't know if I'm saying it right, from Vario. They've developed these distance technologies. That's a new firm, a new company they've created. And it's the first glass-free mixed reality company. So I'm really, really interested into these developments as well. So that was like my last bit about that. Yeah.
Really interesting. I think it just goes to show, as you say, Kevin, how much there is out there, how much is going on, that it's almost too much to count it all up. We could spend hours summarizing 2024's developments and their companies, big and small, and that's only a good thing. But let's wrap this up by just taking a look into the future a little bit. With January coming alongside big events, CES, MWC, etc. There's many going on the first 6 months. What are you both looking forward to most? What's going to be your highlight in the next 6 months? What are you keeping an eye on? Kevin, why don't you start us off, and Laticia, you can finish us off with your response.
Well, I'm a glutton for punishment, so I'm off to CES in January. I've already either reached out or been contacted by probably 40 or 50 companies. Everything from new ways of building lens technology for XR for the future to new haptic technologies, so you have a better haptic feedback in anything, clothes, whatever. There's a lot of there's a bunch of new companies, as you'd expect at CES. There's a bunch of companies I've never heard of going, oh, we're coming onto the XR glasses space, so we've new glasses. A lot of the usual suspects are all there, and they'll all have some announcement of the next generation, or a new feature, or a bigger, faster, better. There's a lot of industrial companies there. Now I'm back there. I'll be doing some work with Siemens. Are back there. Siemens last year at the opening keynote of the event, they announced with Sony the immersive engineering head-mounted display headset. Sony have been awarded the best innovation in XR this year. There's 2 companies. Sony is for their headset, so they're back.
But we haven't seen it, have we?
If you went right, I live in that world. So if you're at Hanover Messe, if you were at different events, they've been demoing it so you can see it. But it's being so. I suppose put it this way, without getting into a product review, it's a VR headset, but the way it interacts, the controllers you use, and the way it is directly hooked up, it only works right now with one Siemens CAD software, INX. But you're working on the CAD design. Roy, we're all working on it. You're looking at a screen. I have the headset on. You do an update in real time somewhere in the world. I put on the headset and I see it over here. I see your changes instantly. So it's about what's under the covers. It's not just the headset. It's not just
Under
the
the hood.
controllers.
Interesting.
It's running off an engineering design tool that the big guys do for building boats and oil rigs and whatever. So it's not the solution. It's just a way of it's a way of interacting with it. Anyway, they got best of thing. Obviously, you have Hanover Messe coming up in April, and in between that, there's a lot of energy events. You have Sarah Week, you have whatever. So I'll be off of these. But again, as I say, the things I'll be looking out for is that not that people have XR or spatial computing splashed all over their booth, but it's how are they addressing the need for more skilled workers? How are they addressing the need for we got to break down the silos inside the companies, because if we want to train our language models, we want to create a digital twin, we got to get to this kind of, what do you want to call it, a platform or a something?
Big data department, division, whatever, but yes, cross-sectorial, yeah, exactly.
Got it, because if I don't do that now, I can't train my AI, I can't build my digital twin, or else I'll just end up with more silos and I'm back to square one, and I'm thinking, so that's what I'm kind of watching out for now. And every time we'll see the new AI chips and the new AI foundational models and the next sensor tech and the next yada yada yada. I think they're just all little building pieces that'll help us start ultimately building things. So and I'm sure there'll be announcements that we didn't even know were coming, going, oh wow, didn't know that was coming. So hopefully we'll see more of that. There's more and more partnerships being announced, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Not everyone's doing it on their own anymore, but it's Meta with this and Google with that and Apple with these or whatever, right? And industrial players with sometimes having partnerships with their competitors, which you're like, okay, that's different. So it'll be an interesting, but CES will be the first, whatever, organized chaos.
Brilliant. And Laticia, why don't you round us off and give us what you're looking forward to in the next 6 months in terms of XR and events, etc.
I'd like to know when this Samsung headset is going to come out. I'm quite excited about that because I'm a Samsung lady here at home. So, and then besides the haptics, optics, and sensors developments that have been the major, I would say, research and development in the latest years, and we've seen a lot of them. I'm keen on the use cases in the luxury branch, because many very high-end and fashion houses and luxury brands are using immersive technologies as kind of a cherry on top for some of their clients. So it's something that is, it's for the few, it's not, so it's not for everyone, and it's only for customers with certain means. So there are more and more solutions that are on a different stratosphere, and you have like different contents that we don't even get to watch or see because it's made for a specific public in a specific environment. I know Emporio Armani has done that. Audemars Piguet has done it in its manufacture. I know other brands are doing it. Some of them are specially crafting immersive experiences for Vivatech, for instance, in Paris. So for me, this development of XR as a luxury experience for the luxury market, it's interesting. And I've always, I come from the watchmaking industry here in Switzerland, so it's also something that I'm a bit curious about.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you both so much for that. I appreciate you gave us a lot of insights, and also appreciate that both of you have been absolutely dedicated to the Big XR News Show in 2024. So I thank you for that. Thank you for the past 40 minutes of expertise and the past year. Need the animated augmented reality.
Rory.
It's fantastic.
There's AR for that.
We need to see each other live one day. We need to have a live meeting and show.
We should be. We all travel a good bit. Now, granted, there we all go in different directions, but we need to probably plan calendars a bit better.
Plan one event where we'll all be there. Perhaps the Mobile World Congress.
Maybe. Well, that might be in 2025, and I look forward to another year of the Big XR News Show with you both and some of our other panelists who cannot make it today. But thank you so much, Kevin, Laticia. Always appreciate your time. That's it for myself. And if the readers want to learn more, please visit the website. Cheers, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
folks.
you.
Happy
Happy
Christmas.
holidays. Yes.